Sounds that make Squidward upset.
Nobody, and I do mean nobody, needs an introduction to SpongeBob SquarePants. It's not just an amazing show, but it's also a cultural icon. From the serious, to the movies, to the adult adaptations. Hell, there's even how to draw art books. In just 21 years, the inhabitants of Bikini Bottom have found their way into every form of entertainment, with arguably their second biggest footing being in video games. SpongeBob has had almost 40 games, and that's not counting his appearances in Nickelodeon crossover titles. Just for comparison's sake, the Ninja Turtles have been around for 36 years and have a little over 50 games. Whether you want to admit it or not, this little sponge is undeniably a gaming mascot, and that reputation is mostly due to a game known as Battle for Bikini Bottom, specifically the release for 6th generation consoles, as the PC and GBA releases were completely different games. Battle was a licensed 3D platformer that typically would have been just swept under the rug like the rest of them. But thanks to the fan base and a surprisingly dedicated speedrunning community, Battle found its audience, and they clamored for a remaster. And finally at E3 2019, a remake was announced under the subtitle Battle for Bikini Bottom-Rehydrated. It was being worked on by a fairly new developer, Purple Lamp Studios. So needless to say, the internet was in a bit of a frenzy, and while I sympathize with the enthusiasm, I have to admit, I know nothing about this game. Despite my love for the character and the show and the first movie, I had never played a SpongeBob game. I've played the fucking B-movie, but I've never played a SpongeBob game. So once this was announced alongside the fact that it would only be $30, I was intrigued. But then it came to GOG, a PC store where you can buy your games completely DRM free. And after that, I was locked in, baby. Woo! But then the review embargo lifted. Video game reviewers everywhere had an overall lukewarm reception for the remake, while audiences were just raving about it. Journalists claimed it to be clunky, unimaginative, and unremarkable, as your general players were saying how the game was polished, fun, and true to the spirit of the original. So, as usual, I am here to be the voice of reason. I'm just yanking your chain. I, your humble pizza father, am just here to relax with a fun SpongeBob game and write a quick review because the other video I was supposed to write to come out today completely fell through, leaving me with only one day to write, record, and edit an entirely new video. Content creation is fun, kids. Yay! Again! Before we move on, I feel like this should be made very clear, almost crystal, as one would say. Rehydrated is not a reimagining, nor is it an entirely new game with the skeleton of the original title, almost like the Resident Evil 2 remake. It is the original game with a new look. Cool? Yeah? We're on the same page? I can move on to gameplay? Yeah? Fine? Alright. For those in fear of this game ruining the aesthetic or general controls of the original game, while I don't know firsthand, Rehydrated definitely still feels like it's from the 2000s. It feels very floaty, especially in sections where you glide as Sandy or when sliding down slides, which is completely fine. There is a little bit of a learning curve in my opinion, but the game is made with this sense of float in mind. Unlike in other 3D platformers I have played, a missed jump or something along that lines can easily be reversed, just as long as you're quick enough. Speaking of which, in all honesty, I expected this game to be a little difficult. Some of you may be laughing on the other end of your screen, but licensed games in the 2000s were infamous for being ridiculously hard for no damn reason, especially those based on cartoon properties for some reason. I can slog through a hard mode on most modern games, but to this day I have never beat Spider-Man 2 and The Incredibles. They are the bane of my existence and they're made for children. So since the gameplay is pretty much the same from 2003, I thought that this game would be in the same vein. And no, it's not. It's a 3D collectathon platformer. It's way more focused on enjoyable platforming and bosses than it is on difficult combat. And I love that. Man, you play enough AAA games nowadays are all focusing on the same damn things, and you too will start begging for an easy SpongeBob game as well. However, easy doesn't always translate to being easy. That kind of sounds dumb saying it out loud. The general combat and platforming may be as easy as lemon meringue, but the puzzle solving is very, very obnoxious. I specifically loathed the steel ball and the power cylinder sections. To be fair, like most collectathons, you could do whatever you want at whatever order or pace you decide, which is why actual difficult levels like the dreams are engaging. They're an optional test of skill that you want to overcome, while these puzzles are just slapped in the middle of an area to make the player stop, think for a second, only to get frustrated. I'd much prefer the game to have more difficult platforming sections that test the player's patience and skill, rather than just the former. Boss battles are a breeze as well, however, they're more of a pattern, and very rarely does that pattern ever change during the course of the fight. On top of that, you can't damage any of the bosses until you dodge all of their attacks, which ends up turning all of these encounters into more of a jumping and weighty game rather than timing your attacks just right. But to make up for that, there's the news announcer who comments over the entire boss fight, which is pretty funny. Plus, the fights are only like 4 to 5 minutes tops, and that's if you die when you're learning their patterns. Keyword being if. However, the game makes up with that with fucking Tony Hawk! The sliding sections make up for all of the gameplay's shortcomings. These moments are fun and arcadey. Plus, they encourage the player to learn the tracks in order to find shortcuts so you can beat that time record in order to get the golden spatula. My only gripe, my only little piece of shit gripe, I just wish there was more tracks. Hey, so since Tony Hawk games are back as well, can we have one entirely based on Spongebob, please? 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 Where the original game looks charming in how it attempts to be an accurate recreation of the early seasons of the show, but ends up looking very desaturated and a bit awkward, Rehydrated succeeds with flying colors in both recreating an accurate look, while also adapting it to CG. Just looking at these two side by side resonates how this isn't just a lazy up-res 6th generation port to a modern console. The original game did its damnedest to recreate the look of the earlier seasons, and for that, I commend them. If it just had more color and better models, then that original game still could have held up to this day as a definitive representation of that earlier look. But Rehydrated ends up adapting the overall look of the show, resulting in a more flush, vibrant appearance while still keeping its general feel intact, down to having the same sound effects and the original voice work from the 2003 release. Yes, that even includes the subpar impressions of Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man.
Because you're gullible, I'm gonna help you out. And of course make a small profit in return.
This is the one thing that I did wish that THQ had also fixed as well. Again, the original still looks alright, especially when you keep in mind that it was trying to adapt a 2-dimensional show to a 3-dimensional platformer all the way back in 2003. But it is kinda obvious that the focus was more being one-to-one to the series' look, as opposed to adapting the overall style to make it a cohesive looking game. I mean, just look at Sandy's arm, what the fuck? Initial reviews had a lot of reports of bugs and glitches. Now, most of these were based off of early review copies that did not have the day one patch, and I haven't really seen any in action. So yeah, there's a lot of reports out there saying that the game is buggy as shit. As far as I know, everything's been patched out, but again, I have not personally experienced any of this, so any opinion that I could have on that is a moot point. No. My issues with this game have been with the generally bare bones PC release. As much as I want to praise THQ Nordic for supporting DRM-free PC games by releasing this on GOG, Battle for Bikini Bottom-Rehydrated has got to be the most malnourished game in terms of technical options that I've seen in a very long time. There are no graphics options, only VSync, Gamma Slider, which I've never touched in my entire life, and your resolution. Absolutely nothing else. If, on the off chance that you've never seen a PC game's graphics settings, here's what it's supposed to look like, and this is what Battle for Bikini Bottom looks like. No shadows, texture quality, anything. The sucky thing is that I see this is really common in PC releases for more family-friendly games such as the LEGO titles, and it's infuriating. But wait, there's more! The game has absolutely no button remapping or cursor lock, which is an option that would allow my mouse to go outside of the game window, so a lack of that makes recording this game a living hell. This stuff isn't optional. Settings like this are just the standard. I mean, at least have graphics presets. While this game may have very generous minimum PC requirements, I still had frame rate drops, especially when recording, so I would have liked the option to cap the frame rate at 30 FPS for the more demanding areas like Goo Lagoon where the stuttering is more likely to happen. But nope, I can't do that, so I was forced to record in windowed mode at 720p, the lowest resolution, without VSync, solely because there are no graphics options. This is completely inexcusable. Hey, THQ, this isn't 2003 anymore. PC settings have evolved past one size fits all. Sadly, I'm not too sure if options like this can be patched in, which is beyond disappointing. This hands down is my biggest issue with the game. Just by looking at the release trailer, you could tell that this game was made for old fans who want to see a new take on their old favorite, as well as an entirely new audience. With me falling in the latter category, I would have never played Battle for Bikini Bottom if it wasn't for this remaster. Rehydrated should be commended, both for the stuff that I mentioned in the video, but also for the amount of just care and attention that they put in this game. The show accurate models, the idle animations that reference specific episodes, the gameplay that is equally comfortable and nostalgic. Rehydrated has it all for only $30. That alone is something that should be made clear everywhere. Companies like Capcom or Square Enix will re-release a game on a new console at a slightly higher resolution or frame rate for a full $60. All for something that definitely did not take an entire team of people to work day in, day out in order for it to be released. If you want to hear about that topic more, I just made a video about it 2 weeks ago. The card's in the upper right corner of the video. Or you can just wait till the end of this one. It's almost over. There's some fucking freight train driving next to my house. Where was I? Nah, fuck. The point is that Purple Lamp Studios and THQ Nordic remade this game's visuals from the ground up in a completely new engine along with cut content from the original game and released it for half of the standard price. That in and of itself is just chef's kiss. While I do have some issues, some of which I didn't have time to cover, I really like this game. Some journalists or reviewers may have looked at this title and only saw some old licensed Spongebob game that's been remade for some dang reason. It's just the exact same game from 17 years ago, whatever. While I personally see this as a complete win. An already great game is now available to more people at an affordable cost. It is $30 across the board from PC to console. Just keep in mind that the PC version does not have enough graphic options, and that just bothers me. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Did you enjoy this week's video? Have you played Battle for Bikini Bottom, either the original game or the new remake? Is there something that you want to recommend that I take a look at in the future? Just let me know in the comments below. Next time, I'll be taking an extensive look at Bethesda's previous controversial game, Fallout 4. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next week. Later, kids. Have a good night.